True camping story that occurred 20 years ago in Mount Charleston outside of Las Vegas, Nevada in October. My wife and I had just adopted a husky/German shepherd mixed breed dog that we named Bear. This dog was wild looking and we decided to go camping to bond with our new canine companion at our favorite area to camp and hike. The next day we packed the Scout International with food and our camping gear, and our dog Bear. We drove up to the mountains, arriving near Cougar Ridge Trail off of Deer Creek Highway at around 1600 hours, and hiked around looking for a good spot to set up camp. We hiked up to the cliff about 10 minutes away. From there we parked the Scout, with Bear following us. When we decided to hike down the side of the cliff, we figured Bear would follow us, but he did not. We shouted his name for a few times. Then suddenly, at the top of the 30-foot cliff we just came down the side of, we saw Bear just standing there looking at us. He just looked there looking over the edge. Then he disappeared. Less than 3 or 4 seconds later, he came flying off the cliff like Superman, landing on our feet and skidding past us down the mountain. He hit a large, fallen tree with his face, instantly stopping him. We examined him, poured water in his mouth, and amazingly, he survived jumping off this 30-foot cliff without any major injuries, and only had a little bit of blood in his mouth from the rocks hitting his face. We had enough excitement and could tell the sun was about to set. So we decided to look for a good spot to pitch our tent and set up camp. We hiked over the next ridge away from the cliff and we found a small flat 15-foot clearing in the middle of a group of trees. After setting up our tent, we made a fire to prepare hot dogs for dinner. It was a cool, clear night, and it started to get cold fast, so we let the fire die down and went into our tent with Bear. I'm not sure how it happened, but somehow we got on the topic of demons as we laid there talking. A short while later, we both felt like it was time to talk about something else because we were getting kind of creeped out. As we laid there silently, it got eerily quiet. It was so quiet we could not hear a sound for a few minutes. Then Bear started to growl, followed by an intense whimpering and loud barking. Suddenly, it felt like a force was shaking our tent from every direction simultaneously. We did not know what was happening. The violent shaking went off for what felt like at least a minute. Bear was barking his head off, and we were both sitting up in our sleeping bags, completely petrified. As soon as the shaking stopped, I climbed out of my sleeping bag, grabbed a knife and unzipped the tent, just far enough to peek outside. I was amazed to see no one was there, and the sounds of the night were back. We both immediately grabbed our flashlights and put Bear in a leash and unzipped the tent all the way. We quickly climbed out of the tent and bolted down the side of the mountain, completing like a 10-minute hike in less than 5 minutes. Arriving back to where the Scout was parked, leaving our tent and gear on the ridge, we then drove to another area near Lee Canyon Road, parked the Scout, and the 3 of us slept in the back of the Scout with the seat down and huddled together for warmth. As soon as the sun came up at 0700 hours, we drove back to our original parking spot and silently hiked back to our campsite on the ridge to retrieve our gear before driving back to Las Vegas. We never went camping together again in Mount Charleston or spoke of the incident. Sadly, the week after our camping trip, our dog Bear ran away from home, and we never saw him again. This story just happened, so it's very fresh in my mind. The date was Canada Day 2019, and what I'm about to share with you just happened this weekend. I have a camping spot that I go to about 10 kilometers up Jump River where it meets the Nanaimo River. This special little spot is accessible by foot, but it takes you about an hour to reach it from the parking lot. Often, I take my motorbike up there and camp in the most majestic spots. Now, for those who don't know where it is located, it is on the southern portion of Vancouver Island, the largest island off the Pacific America. Yes, in Canada. Vancouver Island is relatively underpopulated for its size, and our native brothers and sisters have always had a very strong cultural relationship to the wild man of the woods, as the Sasquatch are called sometimes. and was something to be feared and avoided at all costs, as it was deeply woven into history here as bad omens. What happened to me last night is one of the most unbelievable experiences I have ever encountered. As I was getting into my hammock after cooking steaks and watching stars all by my lonesome, I was fumbling with my flashlight, and I thought I saw what appeared to be a giant face in a tree about 15 feet away. I suddenly stopped and cleared my eyes, and focused in disbelief at what I was seeing. It was clear as the brightness of my flashlight, a giant face in the tree. Almost the very second that I had made eye contact with this thing, simultaneously, a giant rock or large object was thrown into the river not even 30 feet in the other direction from my hammock. It took all of my strength, but I refused to look away from the face that appeared to be about 9 feet tall and blended in with the forest around it. Sploosh! Another rock gets thrown into the river, making a huge distraction. It worked, and I broke eye contact with the face and looked towards the river in the darkness to see, of course, no evidence. So I quickly returned my gaze to the tree in question, and that's when my heart dropped from my ribcage. The face that had been clearly visible seconds before had completely vanished, but what was more alarming was that so was the entire tree. Any evidence of what I was sure I was looking at had disappeared. It was then that I became aware of whatever it was. It wasn't alone. Its friend had noticed that I had noticed it and tried to distract me. That was the objective of the 2 loud rocks thrown in the river at 1 a.m. This terrified me. I was now 10 kilometers past the last mailbox and deep in the forest, and was suddenly filled with dread that I was not actually alone. I slept with my rifle in my hammock that night, with the safety on. I have always heard of these stories and feel confused, as now I actually have to continue to explore more on this subject. It seems that these beings are something left over from the great flood of Noah. I'm not sure, and I'm not convinced they have good intentions just yet. I will keep the swamp updated if I encounter anything new. This story is in 2 parts. Part 1. I went on a fishing trip with my dad. We later realized we weren't alone. To start off this story, I will not be giving the location of my encounter. I'm a male and I don't really believe in cryptids, ghosts, etc. I look at everything scientifically, but a few months ago I encountered something that has left me ominous and on edge. I tried to forget about it, but after half of a year, I still can't forget about it, and it's still fresh in my mind. I went camping in the woods with my dad. It had to be at least an hour drive on a dirt path into the woods. It took another 10-minute walk before we found a nice spot to set up camp near a lake. When we arrived at the spot, it was around 6 p.m. The sun was beginning to set, so my first move was to set up all the fishing gear. Meanwhile, my dad was setting up our tent and making a fire pit. By the time all that was set up, it was already 6:30 p.m. We began fishing, and hell, we even caught a couple of big fish we planned on eating. It got dark after a while, and it got too dark to see our bobbers properly, so we stopped fishing for the night. Shortly after, we lit up the fire and began cooking the fish. My dad started to tell stories of his time in the military, which I always found fascinating as a kid. He was very into telling his story and completely oblivious of his surroundings. I was too deep into listening to his story to notice anything either. Suddenly, I felt a chill rush through my body. I noticed the entire woods were dead silent and not emitting any sounds. No birds, no water, no wind, nothing. My dad suddenly stopped mid-sentence with the most terrified look I have ever seen on a man's face. He quietly commanded me to get a shotgun, which he always took on trips in the woods to fend off from any aggressive wildlife. I got a shotgun. His exact words were, "Do not think of it. Do not speak of it. It will only get attracted." The air felt dense and heavy. I have asthma, which did not make this any better, and I began coughing. My dad shrieked out loud, "Shh!" as though commanding me to keep quiet. Right after he did that, we heard the snap of a branch. It was very quiet, but still noticeable about 10 meters away. My dad looked in that direction, and there was silence and no movement for about 5 minutes. It was the deepest silence I'd ever heard. The air began getting heavier and heavier. I turned my head to view my dad. He is a 6'5" giant of a man, nearly pissing his pants of fear. Sweat was dripping off his face as he was gripping his Remington very tightly. I heard another noise. It was like the sound of dead leaves cracking from the opposite side of where the noise first originated, but this time it was closer and louder. My eyes locked onto something. 2 white eyes reflecting the light of the campfire. My dad looked at me and saw my scared eyes, locked onto something behind him. He widened his eyes and kept looking at me until he got my attention. He very cautiously and very slowly moved his hand to the flashlight mounted on the barrel of his gun. In the blink of an eye, he turned around and turned the flashlight on, aiming at whatever he saw. The light hit it, and I saw the most unearthly, inhuman-looking thing I have ever laid my eyes upon. I only viewed it for a little, but I can describe it as a pale human. But it didn't feel right. Human eyes don't reflect light. There was little to no body hair on it. It looked malnourished. When I say that, I mean very malnourished. Almost its entire body was like skeletal. It looked like, with any movement, the bones could pierce the skin. It was laying low onto the ground, but as soon as I saw it, I could tell this thing was massive. It was bigger than my dad, and was at least 7 feet tall. Its arms were the worst I viewed. They were very out of proportion, almost the length of its body. At the end of the arms was the most terrifying thing I got to see. Its hands, or rather claws, they were very thin and long and stained with crimson-like spots which I could only assume was dried up blood. I'm just glad I didn't have to view its face. When the light hit it, it let out the most blood-curdling and most unearthly screech I have ever heard. My dad emptied about 3 shots in rapid succession into it. He quickly screamed, "To the car, now!" I ran as fast as I possibly could. Whilst running, I heard a voice. A voice, but it didn't sound right. The tone wasn't human-like. The voice said, "Come back. Help me, please." My dad yelled at me to not think about it and to not look back. When we finally reached the car, I felt the biggest relief I have ever felt. We immediately went into the car and sped away. Well above the speed you should drive over a dirt road. I swear I could feel it watching me, following every movement. When we got out of the woods and onto the road on a lit-up street, we calmed down a bit. I asked my dad, "What was that?" He repeated his words he said at the camp. "Do not think of it, do not speak of it, it will only get attracted." Sometimes I can still hear the same voice when we near the edge of the woods. Whatever it was, I think it wants me. I do not wish to ever go back, but I need answers. What the hell did I see? What was that thing? Part 2. I'm back with another story. I shared a previous story of my encounter with a cryptid. It somehow tracked me down. My friends and I went in some densely packed woods, which had to be a 30-minute walk. We made a little chill spot from stones and branches where we always smoke weed together. We chose to go here since not a single soul ever goes to that spot. One of my friends, who we will call Colin, put on music on his Bluetooth speaker when my other friend Nick began rolling the joint. We were chatting about life and laughing, having a genuinely good time. We were smoking some pretty dank stuff. We had 15 grams all to ourselves, so we had a very hard trip. Nick said, "Ha, dude, imagine if some creature came running through the woods right now." Then that thought came to mind, that of my previous encounter. The thought was stuck in my head and I tried my best not to think about it. I still remember my dad's words. "Don't think of it, don't speak of it, it will only get attracted." I began getting nervous and told Nick to shut the heck up, dude. He was tripping quite hard, so of course he did not take me seriously and was laughing his head off. Meanwhile, I could just feel it. The air. It began getting heavy. I felt as if I was going to pass out from fear. We had nothing except for deodorant, pocket knives and lighters. I then felt it, the sensation of being watched. I started frantically looking around. Colin noticed me being paranoid. He asked me if I was doing good. He also said that maybe we should just leave. We began spraying deodorant on ourselves so we didn't smell like weed in case we saw someone else. Whilst Colin was spraying himself with deodorant, he stopped. He said, "Am I tripping hard, or is it completely quiet around here?" I noticed it too. And hell, even Nick began getting nervous. I told everyone to stop doing what they're doing, to hold their breath and just listen for any noise. It was silent. Dead silent. Nick looked at me and said, "Don't move, we're being watched." He pointed his eyes to an opening in the woods. I saw what I guess I could call it again. The thing came back for me. When it noticed we clearly saw it stood up. The only words I can use for describing my view is, what in God's name? This thing was bigger than before. When it stood up, it was the size of a small tree. I'd say around 10 feet at least. 10 feet of nothing but unholiness. It got bigger, and from what I have read online, they get bigger after killing more victims. This thing was responsible for the fate of more than just a few people. This time, however, I saw its face. It had sunken-in eyes, no nose, no hair whatsoever on its face. Its mouth, though. Oh my God. It was filled with razor-sharp teeth still dripping in blood. It didn't even acknowledge my friends. I swear it just looked straight at me. It must have remembered me somehow. Its gaze made me feel dizzy. I read about this creature before. It's either a Wendigo, skinwalker, or a rake. The Wendigo was vulnerable to fire. An idea popped into my mind. Deodorant plus a lighter makes a short-range flamethrower. In case it was a Wendigo, we'd at least have something to protect ourselves with. We were all still tripping. The fear in us didn't make this any better. We made a plan. The forest where we were facing the thing was north. East of us was a tiny bit of forest we could run through before entering an open field, where houses are clearly visible. It was private land which we were technically not allowed to enter, but I'd rather lose some money from a fine than my life. It suddenly ran toward us on all fours like some rabid animal trying to utter its best. We booked it. Whilst running, I grabbed the deodorant and lighter and stopped. I spewed a flame towards it. It hissed loudly and backed off a few meters. I noticed this and how it was afraid of fire. I grabbed a knife and stabbed the deodorant canister, which made a hole, spewing the deodorant out of it. I lit it and threw it at the thing. I think the flame shot inside of the can because we heard the can explode, followed by a screech/hiss that was so loud it hurt our ears. We sprinted. We weren't just running, but full-on sprinting. The adrenaline made it seem like I had infinite stamina. This time, however, I did not obey the words of my dad. I looked back, saw the thing where it previously stood. It looked kind of damaged. My plan maybe worked. We reached the house nearest to the field, jumped the backyard fence and frantically knocked on the door. A man looking like he was in his late 50s, early 60s opened up and we explained the situation to him. He grabbed a map. This map was filled with pictures. The man said, "Now you boys are very lucky. This thing has been tearing up my yard for ages and killed a lot of my animals." He opened up a page where you saw a chicken pen. It was completely trashed. He then showed a picture of a dog. The poor thing was completely ripped apart, mauled like hell. He flipped the page and showed a cut of a newspaper fragment. All the reports of people missing from those woods. There were at least 20. He offered to drive us home and we gladly took his offer. He dropped us off on the corner of the street. Before saying goodbye, he said, "Listen up, son. Even thinking about it puts you in grave danger. This thing has much more power than you realize. Don't let it get in your mind near the woods ever. Don't ever speak of it when you're in the woods unless you have some sort of death wish. The forest is no longer safe. As soon as you know of it, the forest becomes a dangerous place. Please refrain from even thinking about it. Protect everyone you love from this thing. Fire seems to be its only weakness. If that thing gets anyone else, don't try to save them. Just run so it doesn't get more victims." This is a short story, but I thought I'd share it with you anyway. So this experience happened several years ago when I went on a camping trip with my dad and his ex-partner, as well as our two dogs, Agro, a small Chihuahua cross with our boxer cross, Maddie. We were on our way to a mountain peak called Charles, located in Western Australia. We had to take a long gravel road off the main highway, and it took probably a 55-kilometer drive to get there. About halfway down the gravel road, we decided as it was getting dark that we would camp at a place called Muir's Rock. As soon as we pulled up into the small clearing where we were going to set up camp, I knew that something just felt off about this place. The vibe I was getting was wrong, and my dad and his ex felt it too. After we set up camp, we all went for a small walk onto the rock, and we noticed how quiet it was. Unnaturally quiet. Usually you'd see lizards running around on the rocks and hear sounds of bats and crickets and birds, but we didn't hear a single sound at all the entire time. Even Maddie and Agro were on edge the whole time we were there, growling and staying close to camp, which was highly unusual for those dogs as they always wanted to run around and explore all the different smells. We also found what looked like something had been digging in the ground for roots. Now my dad suggested that the dug-up areas were from wild pigs, but I know it wasn't pigs that were making all those creatures go silent and making the dogs scared. We were being watched by something else, something predatory and sinister, and if we didn't have the dogs with us on that camping trip, I think we would have probably had something stalking us. I have no idea what it was, but I know it wasn't anything good, and I would never go camping at Muir's Rock ever again. This happened 2 years ago. Me and my two friends went camping in the biggest park in my country. It has been a while since we saw each other since I started to work right after school and they went to college. One of them studied to be a movie director and the other one always wanted to be a teacher. We drove in a beat-up old Opel Kadett that my friend owned, and we put on music from AC/DC and Bon Jovi on the loudest that we could make it go. This weekend was going to be awesome. I had it all planned out. The hiking, the barbecuing, all of the nonsense we will talk about and jokes we'll make. When we were still in school, we saw each other every day, and you only realize how great it is when you are out of school and don't get to see them as much. The 2-hour drive to the park was awesome in itself. When we got there, we quickly put up our tents and unpacked our stuff. It was already quite dark, so we figured we'd be leaving for hiking the next day. We have read a lot about cases where lions escaped, and it just seemed dumb to take any risk in the dark. We ate some snacks and watched movies till we fell asleep just after midnight. We were all exhausted after the long day and wanted to be energized for the hike and whatever else we would be doing the next day. I'm not sure how late it was, but I woke up suddenly. The first weird thing I noticed was that I could see the sky. I mean, the tent is closed. How could I be seeing the sky? It just did not make sense to me. I tried to sit up and look around me to see what the hell was going on. That's when I felt a massive pain through my stomach. I lifted up my shirt, revealing a few massive cuts on my stomach. It looked like a symbol or something. It was hard to make out at first with all the blood and all still running. It got clearer. It was a symbol for Satanism. I tried to scream, but I was too weak. I eventually passed out. I am not sure if it was from blood loss or exhaustion or what. The next time I woke up was in the hospital with one of my friends asleep in the corner of the room and the other looking anxiously at me. He told me everything, how they found me in the morning a few kilometers away from our tents, how they brought me to the hospital, and also how the police arrested a massive cult of Satan worshippers. Apparently they targeted smaller groups of campers to make sacrifices. I don't know how they decided to spare my life. Perhaps to send a message, or maybe it was their plan to leave me for dead and let me bleed out. I also have no idea how they got me a few kilometers away without me waking up. The doctors did not find anything weird in my system. The police did a search of the entire park, which was pretty massive. They found a lot of bones. Many of the bones were animal bones, but sadly some of them were human. I guess whenever someone got lost, everyone figured an animal had eaten them. not knowing what something far more sinister had been going on out there. The events of this story happened a couple years ago to my friends and I after our last day of high school in our senior year. We decided to celebrate by hiking and camping in this massive forest close to our hometown. We talked about it for years, and this was going to be our celebration for graduating. Our friend group was pretty outdoorsy, but so were most of the people who grew up here. Anyways, we had always heard that there was a beautiful crystal clear lake in the middle of the forest. The lake was supposedly accompanied by a breathtaking waterfall. One of our friends, Chris, got hiking directions to the lake, and we decided to make this post-graduation trip a reality. Chris had the most outdoor experience out of all of us, so we trusted him to make the plans. It was Chris and his girlfriend Mindy, myself and my friend Danny, and our other friend Tony and his girlfriend Marissa. The trip was planned as a 3-day hiking trip while camping each night under the stars. It sounded amazing. We would reach the lake on the second day, and then head back. We would have to camp one more night, and we would be back the third day, pretty late in the morning. The trip started out amazing. I have never really been the biggest fan of sleeping in a tent, but the views were truly breathtaking. The sounds and the way the sun shined through the trees made it seem like it was just exploring another world. Once it started to get dark, we decided to set up camp for the night. It was pretty comical watching us trying to set up tents while exhausted, but we managed to figure it out. We stayed up for a little while telling stories and playing pitch, but we called it a night relatively early so we could start back up hiking at sunrise. Danny and I woke up in our tent shortly after 3 a.m. We swore we could hear noises outside of the tent. It sounded like air, but didn't have the howling of the wind. He told me of course it was the wind and there was nothing to worry about, but to me it almost sounded like whispers. I could hear sticks cracking in the distance. You'd expect to hear quietness out here or even crickets or something, but instead it was all sorts of other racket. I had a horrible feeling that maybe there was a bear or something out there, or maybe even other people. And then fear came over me, feeling like we weren't alone. Danny eventually fell back asleep, but I was wired for the rest of the night. I sat clutching my pillow and jumped at every other noise. A little after 6, I heard Chris outside of his tent, and I went to greet him. He also heard the weird noises and admitted that in all his years camping he had never heard noises like that, but wasn't really alarmed. We packed up our gear and headed out to the lake. If we kept a good pace, we would make it by noonish. We all seemed sluggish and tired from the night. We were more tired and short with each other that day than previous days. I had an uneasy feeling the entire day, thinking someone was out there following us. About 12:30 we arrived at the lake, and honestly it was so worth it. The waterfalls looked like glass, the way the sun reflected off of it, and the water actually looked like it was glowing. It was beautiful. We swam for a while and played by the waterfall. The events of the previous evening seemed to vanish in my mind for a while. We got dry and decided to start heading back so our third day of hiking tomorrow wouldn't be so bad. We set up camp about 5 hours or so from our cars. If it was up to me, I would have just kept walking. But anybody who has been in the woods at nightfall knows it is pitch black. It isn't worth getting lost, so we decided just to camp. We were all beat and passed out almost right away after setting up camp. Again, I was jolted awake a little after 3 a.m. This time there was no mistaking it. There were clearly voices outside the tent. We could hear woman voices, several of them. They were laughing. Not only laughing like a giggle, a deep screeching laugh. We could hear the branches on the ground breaking around us. It seemed like we were surrounded. Danny was awake with me, and he was scared stiff. We could only make out a few words amongst the mumbles. We could hear the creepy voices say things in low, drawn-out voices. Flesh, and strike, I want to strike. Those horrifying phrases were all followed by more cackling and mumbles we couldn't make out. We sat in fear all night listening to these noises, on and off all night. It would stop for a time, and then start right back up, almost sounding like it was directly outside the tent. At sunrise, we heard Chris yell outside of his tent. We all came out to find a crazy amount of footsteps surrounding our campsite, and they went in all sorts of directions with seemingly no rhyme or reason. There were strange patterns or rocks set up around our camp as well. The sticks looked bent into almost human-like silhouettes. We packed up our gear in record time and nearly ran the rest of the way out of the forest. Unlike the previous 2 days, we heard laughing and twigs snapping in the distance the entire trek back to the car. Myself and Mindy started to cry just because of the sheer panic and fear we felt while trying to race out of the woods, and probably because we were extremely overtired. When we would look in the distance behind us or side to side, we could see nothing. We just heard sounds. We finally made the near 5-hour hike in just under 4 hours. It was an amazing sigh of relief to be able to see the cars. As we all ran to our cars to load the gear up, I sat in the passenger seat and waited for Danny. None of us have ever returned to that forest. I'm not really sure what happened to us over the course of those few summer nights. Some say witchcraft, and others say some women or kids were messing with us. Others think it was our imagination. But we all witnessed the same thing. I know what I heard that evening, and maybe it doesn't seem that scary, but for me, it was one of the most absolutely terrifying nights of my life. What a way to start off a graduation and my summer vacation. When I was about 25, I was camping with 2 of my buds. We were a little way into the large patch of pine trees, which grew close to the reservoir of water, called Jaw Reservoir. It's located in the hills of Dunbartonshire in Scotland. The day was bright, sunny, warm, and beautiful. I think we had only been there a few hours setting up camp, getting a fire ready and such. We had entered the woods from the shoreline through a sort of archway tunnel in the tree branches. We had to duck a little, but it allowed for a path to a clearing where we set up. I had decided to go collect some water to boil from a stream near the shoreline. As I walked out, I suddenly stopped about 3 meters away from the archway. I didn't know why at first. I'd best describe it as a feeling like I was going to trip over something. Like my instincts had stopped me so I wouldn't fall over something or something like that. So I stood for a few seconds trying to figure out why I had abruptly stopped. I glanced around in front of me. The ground was clear and there was nothing except the sunlight shining through the tree branches. I was just about to take a step forwards towards the arched branches when I caught sight of it. The entrance to the archway had a slight shimmer around the entrance. It was like the inner line of the arch was catching the sun, but the way the light reflected was more like water. I noticed a small branch which seemed to bend at a curious angle. I shifted my weight from the one foot to the other, and I could see the shape was 3-dimensional, like a 5-foot blob, rounded off the top and tapering down at the sides. It was invisible except for the light which reflected off of it, like it distorted things around the edge of its form. My jaw dropped. My head tilted to the side in confusion. That's when the thing realized I saw it. I swear to God it ducked, like it was surprised. It turned to the left and ran into the brush. I could see it pass by the light, which shined through the leaves and branches. The brush shook as it passed through, and then it seemed to fade away. I looked over at my friends about 200 feet away. I asked, Did you see that?" "See what?" they asked. I didn't know how to explain it, so I said never mind and went to go get water. Later on, I became convinced that thing must have made the archways through the trees. It almost was exactly the same width and height. I looked around the clearing for other entrances and found none. I've seen several weird things in my life, but that was probably the weirdest thing. I was a maintenance worker at a camping resort in the Appalachian Mountains for several years. It was more like a rich camping resort with luxury cabins that had been renovated, but the place still had an old and rustic feel to it. It was miles from civilization and was super peaceful, especially during the down season. The resort was originally built during the Roaring '20s at the height of Prohibition. The Appalachian Mountains are infamous for moonshining operations, and I'm pretty sure this resort was the center of it back in the day. There is a locked safe room hidden underground where they used to store shine, as well as secret passages underneath some of the oldest cabins that were also used to make the illegal liquor. In its heyday, the resort was visited by numerous members of high society that came to party with the forbidden spirits hidden underneath the resort. One night towards the end of spring, before our busy season began, I was starting to become close with the new tourist manager of the resort. Her name was Kate, and that night she wanted us to sleep outside under the stars. But it started raining. I suggested we sleep in one of the screened-in porches on one of the old cabins that hadn't been renovated yet. I thought it would be pretty cool and be a good compromise, and we could fall asleep to the sound of the rain. Hey, who says romance is dead? After we got everything set up, and did the old in and out, it was past 2 a.m. She fell asleep in my arms instantly, and I laid there unable to fall asleep. I was worried I was going to disturb her, because I usually toss and turn when I have a hard time going to sleep. I figured we'd been laying there for over an hour when I heard what sounded like a door inside the empty cabin open and close. It was either the bedroom or the bathroom. Both of the old doors squeaked really loud and struggled to open and shut. I knew they had been oiled or replaced when they renovated the cabin. My first thought that it was our boss, the resort owner's son. He is super nosy and has been trying to get in the new girl's pants ever since he hired her. He is also very demanding and entitled. I wouldn't put it past him to fire me if he knew the two of us were seeing each other. Yet, I don't know why he should be sneaking around the resort at night or how he would even know we were there. It was a good-sized resort. I proceed to hear footsteps coming from inside the cabin, moving towards the door to the screened porch. I laid there as still as I could, waiting for the door to open and have my boss lose his short temper when he discovered us. I prayed that he would walk away and not find us, but nothing happened. There were no receding footsteps and no more door noises. I stayed up the whole night and didn't hear another noise come from the cabin. There was nothing there except for me, Kate, and the empty cabin. The next morning, Kate rolled over and immediately asked me about the footsteps she heard the night before. Apparently they had woken her up and she had also stayed up all night trying to figure out where they were coming from and who they belonged to. She was terrified and would never go near that cabin again. Unfortunately, I had to go back to that cabin nightly. Part of my job was having to make sure all the lights were off and everything was shut down and empty in the cabins at night. My boss liked to turn the lights on to the empty cabins to give the appearance like the resort had more guests than it really did. Every night I went to the cabin after I always felt a sense of dread as I walked towards the cabin. I think it was because I never figured out what was wrong with the cabin or what was in it that night. The cabin was never renovated during the 4 years I worked at that resort. There's always some excuse that the manager was trying to delay it for whatever reason. I didn't mind, but I hated to go to that cabin at night. Inside the living room of the cabin, there was a huge 175-pound swinging bed on chains that could be lifted up or down to make space for my guests staying in the cabin. Every night, I went to the cabin after we heard the footsteps. I would open the front door to the cabin and find the bed swinging on its own like someone or something had just gotten out of the bed before I got there. Thanks for listening to these creepy camping stories that surely will keep me out of the woods this summer. I don't know about you, but I'm not trying to run into any spooky things in the woods anytime soon. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed these stories, please hit that like button as it helps me out a ton. The more likes this video gets, the more YouTube promotes it to fresh new eyes. If you haven't yet, why not join the swamp? Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to never miss a new video, as I upload them almost every single day and all things natural and supernatural. If you have a story you would like to share in a future video, whether it's a camping story or something entirely different, be sure to submit it at swampdweller.net or the email you can find in the description down below. I would love to share your story with everyone here in the swamp. It's stories like yours that keep this channel going. As always, if you haven't yet, check out my podcast on iTunes and Spotify. I upload exclusive stories that don't come on this channel, including topics you will never find on this channel as well. All you have to do is search Swamp Dweller and you'll find it. It'll pop right up. Thank you guys once again for watching, and I'll see you guys soon with another creepy video.